A warm welcome to the video. A change of pace this week as we talk about something a little bit different. All of these airlines, well, they're all at it. That's right, they're offering an Intra Europe Business Class product. And I ask today, is it really worth it? If that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned as we discuss. Now, this topic is not for the faint of heart, as flyer forums and Facebook groups are awash with people who are astonished that in Europe we have this unusual product called Intra Europe Business Class. Now, whilst I've flown with BA, Iberia, Lufthansa and KLM using this Intra Europe Business Class product, all of the airlines in Europe pretty much follow the same practice. So let's get into the detail and understand a little bit more about what Intra Europe Business Class really is. It's certainly not this. This is Air Europa's Boeing 787-9 in business class, by the way. It's also not this. This is Iberia's A350 business class. It's also not this being BA's old-fashioned Club World business class setting. Now, these are all clearly business class products. Granted, some might disagree about the British Airways example here, but what can you expect from Intra Europe Business Class? Well, first and foremost, you generally have a pretty good ground experience, starting with priority check-in and normally a little bit more luggage. A huge queue at security, I hear you say? Well, not if you're travelling intra-Europe business class. You'll get access to fast-track security. The first example was at Terminal 2 at Heathrow, and this one's at Gatwick. Now, we all know why fast-track really exists. Yes, that's right, you get to the lounge much quicker. Here's a few lounges I've visited over the last few weeks. Ever fought with someone to find space in the overhead bins? Not on Intra-Europe Business Class. With priority boarding, you can get in quick and book a space for your bag above your seat. Happy days. And here's the really contentious bit. You get extra space, which technically means you get an economy seat with the middle economy seat left free. The first example was British Airways and this one is Lufthansa. You'll see you do indeed get more space, but it is still technically economy. But fear not, you'll soon forget about the fact you're sat in an economy seat, as you'll be fed, often with some very nice snacks, and you'll also be provided with a non-stop supply of booze. This is chicken from on Iberia, probably one of the best meals I've had on a plane, really. So there we have it. It looks and feels like a business class product, right up until the moment you get on the plane. And here's most people's beef. The bit that's missing is actually what you find on the aircraft and in the air, which feels a little bit unusual and slightly ironic that the best part of the service is actually on the ground. So let's look at what's missing. Fundamentally, it's the seats. This is economy with British Airways on an A321. As we walk through the cabin, you'll notice there is very little difference between what you've just seen and this, the Club Europe cabin. Sure, you have a little tray in the middle of the seats. This is Lufthansa. Here we are in economy. And they don't even bother to put a tray in the middle seat, but you do get the middle seat free. So what should we expect? Let's go to the gurus at Aerolopa. Here we have a British Airways rather typical looking A321. Those middle seats are disguised on this map with the tray table, but it is a 3-3 layout. This layout can also be dynamically changed and made longer or shorter as needed. But here we have the Turkish Airlines equivalent aircraft, an A321, and look at that, a dedicated 2-2 4-row business cabin. Now that's quite a difference. So is it really all in a curtain? Well, no, clearly not. But what I will say is that Turkish Airlines have chosen to commit to a dedicated business cabin, and I have to say it really shows. Although I'd also say that Turkish Airlines tend to do longer hops through Europe than most of the other airlines. Here's a snapshot of their business cabin. Lovely big seat, felt like an armchair actually, it was very comfortable. a nice, big and spacious cabin where you tend to have at least 2 members of crew looking after you. And finally, almost makes it feel like a long haul flight as you get access to IFE and you get access to really good noise cancelling headphones. You don't see any of that with the European airlines on Intra Europe Business Class. So what does it cost, and does that make any difference as to whether it's worth it or not? Let's take a quick look at some recent examples, and this is flying from London, Madrid, Amsterdam or Frankfurt down to Toulouse, and with the host carrier for that airport. You can see here that flying British Airways, for example, base economy is £62, $79 if you want seats and a bag, and only £156 if you want business. So about double the price. Let's also look at the KLM example from Amsterdam to Toulouse. You can see it's a huge difference. So sticking with British Airways or Iberia, where the cost is about twice what you would pay if you flew economy, does the maths actually work out? If the fares are that low, then potentially. If you need luggage, you fancy the lounge, and ultimately want to get through the airport quickly, then actually an Intra Europe Business Class fare may work out about the same cost. I appreciate it's not a perfect example, but it's a sensible instrument to try and demonstrate why it might be a valued option for you. Clearly, if you're flying with KLM and the price is getting on for 5 times more than you pay for economy, this all falls apart and it really isn't worth it. So why else would people fly Intra Europe Business Class? Well, if you're after frequent flyer status, it can be a very easy way to top up your points so that you progress through those different levels. British Airways has recently changed its programme, and long story short, the more you spend on flights, the further up those different levels you go. Maybe that's KLM's strategy and why their business class fares are so much more than economy, who knows? And I will just say, it's going to be a lot more difficult to get status with British Airways now they've changed their programme. Anyways, I'll leave that for another day. So other channels have the loo review, today I'm doing the food review, and in 4th place, Lufthansa with this rather sorry looking salad. Actually it was okay, but I'd have expected more for business class. 3rd place goes to British Airways, really largely just about my preference for the menu. It was actually really tasty. 2nd place, KLM. This was delicious and washed down with a beautiful champagne. Very, very nice indeed. And finally Iberia, possibly the best piece of chicken I've ever had on a plane. Well played Iberia. So let's conclude. Is Intra Europe Business Class worth it? Now granted, this has hardly been a scientific review, but my general view would be, if the price is right, then absolutely it can be a really nice way to travel. Airports are super busy. If you go through T5 anytime soon, you'll realise it's an absolute zoo, and the ability to go through fast track and sit in a lounge is absolute bliss in comparison to trying to find a seat and getting a ropey old sandwich from Pret. But in the air, you're flying for a couple of hours, and with that seat in the middle free, that does make for quite a nice experience, albeit it absolutely isn't a business class seat, we know this. It's also worth a mention that whilst the Turkish Airlines product is amazing, it's often more than double the price of the equivalent Intra Europe Business Class product for some of the airlines that we've looked at today. So just bear that in mind. So using the cost example, you want a nice experience at the airport. Maybe you're going on holiday, maybe you've got a couple of bags to check, and actually by the time you start to bundle those things together, if you're flying on an economy fare, you may start to find the price drifting towards the Intra Europe Business Class flight cost anyway, so why wouldn't you do it? But using the KLM or the Lufthansa example, where that business class fare was 2, 3, 4 times more expensive than economy, I'm afraid that argument is quickly lost, and it simply wouldn't be worth doing, particularly not for a short flight. My general rule of thumb is if I can get an upgrade for another 100 quid or so, I think it tends to be pretty nice, but anything above that, I simply wouldn't bother. Having put you off Intra Europe Business Class for life, maybe, there are other options where you get to go on a real business class product Intra Europe. First up, it's Air Europa, their 787 from Amsterdam to Madrid. Turkish offers a daily wide body service down to Istanbul, 777s, A330s, or even an A350 if you're lucky. It's the A350 again for Helsinki with Finnair from London Heathrow. And last but certainly not least, again the A350 On Iberia's daily services between Heathrow and Madrid, all of these aircraft offer true business class hard products. Here's the Finnair A350 just to give you a taster. A fantastic cabin with true lie flat beds and all the bits and pieces you'd expect of a proper business class cabin, and it was just the same as an Intra Europe Business Class fare. So it's not all bad. Thanks so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you all again soon.